Hello and welcome to this video about a hybrid cargo ship, Victorian technology, and the idea of Utopia. This started after making some art for a solarpunk art collab, and although that's done with, rendered, submitted, and emailed away months ago now, I must admit I don't think I could confidently tell you what solarpunk really is, other than that general solarpunky look. A city with trees in green, allotments or community gardens. I also think of those hexagonal panelled glass dome things, some solar panels and wind turbines. I've seen the solarpunk art and thought that they did the solarpunk thing and that it looks really cool, but it did get me thinking, what is the thing they're doing, or where does this come from? Where do the ideas that made this stem from? A question that takes us to 2008 with the thing, or at least the term, the source code that people have built solarpunk on, coming from an anonymous internet person who created this blog called The Republic of the Bees. Now, they haven't posted since 2009, so I think they're done with the blog now. But in this short post titled From Steampunk to Solarpunk, Anonymous, who I'm going to call B for the rest of this, talks about considering an economy based on renewable energy and how this might return us to using sailing ships as working cargo ships. In honor of a hybrid cargo ship's maiden voyage, they suggest a new literary genre, solarpunk, and with that, the term was put into the world. Now, although this has been expanded on, formalized into manifestos and such, I like that the foundations of solarpunk stem from renewable energy and the economy. As someone who thinks about solarpunk primarily as an aesthetic, I appreciate that these foundations keep it rooted in the real world, even if what first comes to mind isn't. Its core ideas are things we hear of a lot. We understand broadly what sustainability is and what it looks like. And even though the economy might seem like more of a daunting idea to get our heads around, it's a thing that I have heard of before. And I think that grounds this as more than a concept, which is how I've been thinking about it, but as an optimistic yet hopefully pragmatic realism that could differentiate it from other punk genres. For example, if I think of a retro-futurist atom punk, I think much more of an aesthetic than something to aim for. Similarly, the idea of steampunk, I think less of a proposal of a realistic future, but a possible alternative, a what could have been. Or even cyberpunk, which, although I do think parts of it are more realistic than the other two punks, not only is it a far more dystopian a proposal of our future, but I also think of cybernetic body modification at home, which seems quite a ways off of it being the norm, at least. B goes on to explain solarpunk by contrasting it to steampunk. So again, think elements from Bioshock Infinite, for example. They say, although they both, as in steampunk and solarpunk, conflate modern technology with older technology, steampunk uses Victorian technology to serve as a guideline for imagining an alternative world, where in solarpunk, the interest in older technologies is driven by modern world economics. They give this example. If oil isn't a cheap source of energy anymore, then we sometimes do best to revive older technologies that are based on another source of energy, such as solar power and wind power. This is why the Beluga Skysail, which is a hybrid cargo ship, is the official honorary cargo ship of solarpunk. And again, despite my more far-off future interpretation of solarpunk, B grounds it with a visible, gradual, possible change in infrastructure, like cargo ships that they highlight, which actualizes this punk genre in a way that I think separates it from the others, and of course the more hopeful perspective that B presents. There's an acknowledgement of major transportation of goods being a thing that we need or want, and wind being a more sustainable way we could do it. If we're keeping cargo ships, a way to steer them towards solarpunk is by using wind. B closes this comparison with the sentence, a major difference between solarpunk and steampunk is that solarpunk ideas and solarpunk technologies need not remain imaginary, and I indulge a hope of someday living in a solarpunk world. I think it seems pretty simple but plausible. Ask a question in relation to economics, for example, transportation of goods, and have the answers revolve around renewable solutions. I think this simplicity may partly be why solarpunk, or at least themes of solarpunk, have blossomed or been seen in existing works predating 2008, like film, more recent art, and games. This simplicity and aesthetic nature of solarpunk, however, is also probably why, to an extent, I had relegated it to an aesthetic or a look rather than an actual solution or stepping stone to what a sustainable economy could look like. Its ideas have been foundational in, as mentioned before, manifestos as well. According to one solarpunk manifesto, 2014 onwards is really when solarpunk started getting written about more, having more attention on it, and this attention is probably why I did an art collab centering the ideas of solarpunk in 2025. They define solarpunk as a movement in speculative fiction, art, fashion, and activism that seeks to answer and embody the question, what does a sustainable civilization look like, and how can we get there? As our world roars with calamity, we need solutions, not only warnings. They seem to have expanded this idea of renewable energy to the broader civilization as a whole. And while the question, how can we get there, and making clear that a part of solarpunk is needing solutions, not only warnings, makes me feel more hopeful, something about the larger civilization feels like a far too overwhelming task to accomplish. I want to believe that we can, but it also takes me back to the start of this video of having a solarpunk look, but not realistically, at least having a solarpunk reality within reach. And the word utopia comes to mind. This imagined place with no climate worries, real community, local art, fresh food, good things. But I do think of it as an idea, right? An imagined, a not really possible, but a nice to daydream about thing. Even the word utopia seems a little fake or naive. In the manifesto, they say solarpunk can be utopian, just optimistic or concerned with the struggles en route to a better world, but never dystopian. From that context, I believe they're using it to mirror the word dystopian more than to say solarpunk is an unachievable, unreal, perfect world. And it did make me consider that if utopia mirrors dystopia, then why is one considered more fake than the other? I may just be being pessimistic and a defeatist, but if I'm being honest with myself, I couldn't truly imagine a solarpunk world that at least I think of with the way the world is, especially right now. I think of something like Dear Alice from the Line Animation Studio, and I think this is stunning. Not only the gorgeous art and animation, but the world it depicts. It's lush, it's rich, it looks like a fun world to live in. Alas, much like the cybernetic body modification at home, which would be cyberpunk, the flying school bus, the bendy armed fruit picking robot, the instant rain cloud machine, it all feels so far away. Like I'm watching what I'm watching, a video, not a reflection of what could be. Solarpunk being presented in this way for me becomes more like steampunk, a fun alternate reality where things, tech, life, society went in quite a different direction. Rather than a changing of tracks, this feels like it's an entirely different train that I'm on. A great one, but a different one. And the hope that the blog post in 2008 gave me is set aside, and my thoughts return to solarpunk, the aesthetic, the presentation, the look of nothing but a vision or version of the future out of reach. Now, I do think that this work is important, and as the line puts it, it's a vision of a world worth fighting for. It's not a perfect utopia, but a version of a future we can all reach if we just decide to put in the work. It's there to feed our imaginations for what the future could be. It puts this visual language to solarpunk, which I find very desirable, into the world, and I think that's important. Point 10 of the manifesto is, I think, my favourite though. Solarpunk is about finding a way to make life more wonderful for us right now, and also for the generations that follow us. What B spoke about in 2008 and this point in the Solarpunk manifesto seem to be the bridge between the two, the time between the present 2025 or 2008 and the future that Dear Alice presents us with. I think this bridge is integral in separating solarpunk from an unachievable vision to a possible, to a plausible, then a probable. I came across some art from this small collective of Italian solarpunk creators, which I think embodies this perfectly. The art looks great, but importantly, it's a bridge from now to the possible future that solarpunkers speak of. This one, for example, asks, how does a solarpunk city exchange goods? There's a boat, a train, a bike. I get what that is and what that looks like and how that could operate. This vision feels achievable. Another one asks, how to grow fruit and vegetables in the solarpunk city. I know what a pavement is, I know how trees grow. Move the thing covering the soil, put a seed in the soil, let it grow. This makes sense to me and again feels as though it's achievable. Also, with food prices being what they are right now, imagine your road with some oranges, pears, apples that you can eat and are just there because trees. It's not a shiny, grand, utopic vision, it's a tree. And the last image I'm going to show from this collective, I promise, is like a tiered planter on a bus stop. That's it. Imagine you're going to be making dinner, you need some thyme or rosemary or whatever herb for that meal. You could just pick it from the bus stop on your way home. Of course, there would be growing pains in actually planning all of this out and implementing it, but things like this seem at least feasible. I do understand that a solarpunk world, economy, society, civilization, or however you want to put it, is more than this, but putting planters on a bus stop doesn't seem out of the periphery of imminent achievability, whilst also neatly fitting into solarpunk. And I think this in-between stage makes what I think are grander manifestos of entire civilizations feel more reachable, whilst also being an evolution of the initial blog post to something more. And arguably, planting a tree feels even closer than wind-powered cargo ships. To bring this together a bit, going back to the original 2008 blog and these present-future bridges, this hybridization of existing infrastructure to more sustainable integrations or even sustainable replacements didn't start and end with a hybrid cargo ship. Public transit, which already fits well in a solarpunk world without being fueled with renewable energy, and thinking about other energies than solar and wind, some public transit has been using regenerative braking, which has been around since the 1800s. It's also what's known as an energy recovery mechanism. It slows down a moving vehicle, or really anything with momentum, and converts some of that kinetic or potential energy into a usable form. In most real-world cases, that means electricity. As is said in the article, while it's not perfect, it's progress. I think it's a little solarpunk. I also came across some images of grass on tram tracks and around tram tracks, which honestly I thought just looked really cool. And these aren't around where I am, unfortunately, but they are all over the place. Germany, Egypt, Norway, Ireland, Scotland, Australia, Turkey, Poland, and more. And other than just being more aesthetically pleasing and having a positive impact on the social and mental well-being of people, they have more ecological practical effects, like increasing the water retention capacity, the track temperature rises more slowly, they provide protection from the harmful effects of direct sunlight and increase the durability of the track structure. Pollutants and dust are captured, noise pollution is reduced, the evaporation of vegetation has a cooling effect on the environment, cooling the air around the tracks more quickly and thus having a positive impact on the microclimate. The urban flora provides a habitat for other organisms such as insects, ensuring their survival in highly degraded environments, increasing biodiversity. It seems like if you get the right vegetation for the climate, environment, and soil, it seems pretty great all round. I also reckon that imagery like this would sit rather comfortably in any solarpunk piece of art. But the exciting bit is it's real and out there in the world right now. And I think after doing this little look into what solarpunk is, that's what's really engaging about it, the current and future actual things that we can put in place. To sum this up, the term solarpunk was coined by an anonymous internet user making a blog post linking a hybrid cargo ship, Victorian technology, and the economy together in 2008. Now, there are manifestos, movements, artwork. It seemed to have had ripple effects, and I agree with B that these images need not remain relegated to the imaginary, but that a solarpunk-esque future could be something more real than it is today. And it's not going to look like this, but it could look something like this. That's really it from me. Thanks for watching. They have more keep it rooted in the real world, to kinetic or potential energy. What? Okay, that was wrong. Sorry. Whoops.